Aren't you just so excited? The Constitution and Bylaws. I didn't put the School Act. So the School Act actually gives your PAC the right to exist. But your PAC is actually governed by Canadian law. You're not exempt from that. If there is anything that's going on that you feel is illegal, it still goes through the court system. Like, you don't need to report it to me or to the board or anything like that. If you think someone has hightailed it to Mexico with the fun fair money, that still goes through the police. You also have your Constitution and Bylaws. So remember and try and think, the way I try and think about it, your PAC is your community. Every parent that is part of your community, guardian, parent, your school community, you have children that are attending this school, they are part of your PAC. So you have a community, just like Coquitlam is a community, and just like Coquitlam has councillors and a mayor, your PAC has a PAC executive. You are acting as your leaders on behalf of your community. It's a democratic system. You've been elected. Okay, so you want to try and make sure that you have some understanding of your Constitution and Bylaws, which is going to tell you how you are going to operate as a community. How many have seen your Constitution and Bylaws? Read it end to end. Well done. I'm impressed. But it is, so this is what's going to govern you as a community, how you're going to act and how you're going to try and make sure that everyone's feeling comfortable with how the money's being spent, all that kind of stuff. DPAC, we do get calls sometimes of saying, look, we have someone who's doing this on our PAC and they shouldn't be, make them stop. We do not actually, we're not part of your governance. We're not part of your, we don't tell you what to do. And sometimes PACs are like, oh, well, we do things differently. We don't do it the way that DPAC says you're supposed to do it. Or, it's not our rules. Really, you are governed by your rules. We provide advice, experience, assistance, any time that we can provide those connections, that kind of stuff. But we do not govern you, your Constitution and Bylaws. PAC executive changes. Sandy, we have a larger hard drive on our computer. You can send us an electronic copy. You can send us a paper copy. If your Constitution and Bylaws, if we have it on file, it helps us help you, but it's also there in case executive has changed and you're not sure which one is the most up-to-date copy or those kinds of things. Please feel free to file a copy of it with us. Sandy, are there a lot? We have most of them. Not sure? Yeah? So it would be great to send us a copy if you're not sure even, or you can check with Sandy. Our email address is there. Do you know what your C&B says about? So your Constitution and Bylaws could be completely different than the one next to you. It's your community that's going to vote on those and amend them as you need to. And so everyone is different. These are just some examples, but some things like your Constitution and Bylaws will often say what PAC, what executive positions you need to have. In this particular example, which you may not be able to read on your sheet there, but up here, hopefully you can. So it must include president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary. Now, what happens if nobody wants to be the secretary? According to this Constitution and Bylaws, it says that those 4 positions must be filled first before nominations will be accepted for any other positions. Your Constitution and Bylaws might say something different. You need to look at yours to understand which ones you need to have. In order to get gaming grants, you need to have 2 PAC executive to be able to sign them. That's often a question. What if we don't have a president right now? Do we have to, dissolve our PAC? No, you do not need to. At the next meeting, you try and vote someone and get someone to fill that position. But for gaming, you do need to have 2 people who will sign, 2 elected executives to sign the gaming report. Your other positions here, it says they are non-essential and they can be. You do not always have to have those, but they can have them. Your Constitution and Bylaws will say which ones your PAC has to have. Voting members. This example, it just talked about the fact that administration and teachers may be invited to meetings. If you have a child as a student in that school, you are allowed to attend as a voting member of general meetings. Some of your Constitution bylaws will say that anyone who has been a member of or has worked for the Ministry of Education, a school district, or so-and-so cannot be on your executive. Or maybe it doesn't. You have to look at yours, and sometimes those situations will come up. Okay. Again, knowing who's at your school can have voting and who can be on your executive or not. Okay. Quorum. How many people do you have to have in order for it to be a valid vote? Okay. So, it will most often, what your Constitution bylaws will say is that whoever shows up for a PAC meeting is quorum. Right? Because you may have, like Chuck said, you may have 4 at a meeting, 4 parents who show up in June, but you need to vote on either elections or a draft budget or something like that. Whoever shows up at a general meeting is usually quorum. But in this case, it actually has some little provisos. If the agenda has been provided with less than 1 week's notice, you have to have at least 50% of your executive and then whoever you have there that's a voting member, as long as you have a minimum of 5. This isn't in every Constitution and bylaws, but you need to know what quorum is for you. In this case, at an executive meeting, in order to vote on something, you need to have 2/3 of your voting possessions present. Lots of times that's only 50% for an executive meeting. But know what yours is so that when you are voting on things, you're not going to have to revisit it. Lots of times the main things you're voting on, you're going to vote on elections, obviously, but the other main stuff you're voting on is how to spend your money. People care about how you spend your money, how to spend their money. So trying to make sure that you know what quorum is and making sure that those votes are being done according to your Constitution and bylaws allows you to make sure that your community is being involved and everybody who should get a vote is, and that you can move forward as well. Often what's very frustrating is you're trying to vote on, you want to spend that money that you've been fundraising for 5 years on the playground. And you've picked a design, you've gone through a whole bunch of process, you have committees, you have people who've put in, hundreds of hours of work. When you come to vote, you want to make sure that that vote is going to happen and carry forward, because it's very frustrating to now have a bunch more people question it, go, well, was that a good vote? I don't feel like I had an opportunity to put input into it. And have to reopen the whole thing, carry it over for another month. Right? So those kind of things can drag on. Know that you are doing your votes according to your Constitution, and so that people are going to feel they've had their voice heard and you followed the rules. Does that make sense? Especially for the big ones. Those are the ones that we get calls on most often. Somebody doesn't agree with it, and now they're coming up and saying, that's not fair, there weren't enough people at the vote, or we didn't know about it ahead of time and with enough time, or notice of a meeting. This ties into this. How do people know you have a meeting and what you're going to be voting on? If you're going to be voting on something financial, make sure the information goes out ahead of time. Lots of your Constitution and bylaws will say, notice of a meeting must go out 2 weeks prior. It will be posted on the PAC board and the front door of the school, or whatever that is going to be for you. What does notice mean? How will people know about it? Okay, so this one is a meeting is duly called when the agenda has been posted and distributed to parents at least 7 days prior. Doesn't specify where it's going to be posted, but some of them will. Budgets and spending. Okay, a proposed budget will be drawn up. It needs to be voted at the final general meeting of the year, and a new budget must be approved before the old one expires. Things like that. Also in here it allows for, if you're spending money that's within your budget, you can just go ahead and spend it. If it's outside of your budget, you need to vote on it at a general meeting. It does here say if it's not possible to vote on it at the prior meeting, then you can have it up to 10% of the budget amount, or $200 can be voted on by the executive. What are those rules for your community? Okay. Fundraising, most of them I think have this type of a clause. Fundraising will not be undertaken unless you have a clearly identified and agreed upon goal. Don't fundraise just to fundraise. What are you fundraising for? Operating expenses of your PAC usually is one of the things. You might be raising money for a teacher wish list that you guys have gone through a process around, a playground, a computer lab, a bunch of iPads, field trips, buses. That's the stuff that you're going to lay out in your draft budget so people know what you're fundraising for. And here I really like this. Fundraising should not become nor be viewed as the most significant contribution the PAC makes to the school. How many of you feel like, okay, put your hand up if you feel that fundraising is the main thing you do. Kind of feels like it, doesn't it? Honestly, like probably most of us, right? How much of our meeting goes into talking about fundraising? Just a thing to think about. There's often a code of conduct and different things. Just have a look at it. Make sure that you know what that looks like. Make sure that you are, this is just an example. Here, no member or their family will benefit financially from fundraising without disclosing that ahead of time. Sort of the kind of rule of thumb that I would use is when you are sort of doing fundraisers or anything like that, one, make sure you disclose if it is you, and are you making sure that everyone in your community has an equal kind of opportunity to, you know, do you need to get different quotes, different ideas, different bids? If you're just going for the stuff that is, you know, your brother-in-law or anything else, it can sort of breed bad blood within your community. You just want to be aware of those kind of things. Your code of conduct will have some things like that. Make sure you're disclosing and removing yourself from a vote if you feel that there is a conflict in some way. Right? Just trying to keep those things up and above board. And your Constitution and bylaw can be changed. Okay? You will have a section in your Constitution and bylaws that says how you're going, what process you need to go through. Does it need to be a special meeting? Is there a different quorum? Do you need to have more people voting on it or not? How do you present it? And how does that make it fit your community's needs? There are the things that Emile mentioned to do with the School Act that you must have in your Constitution and bylaws. The conditions around dissolution of a PAC, how you will vote on an SPC rep, how you vote DPAC reps in. Sandy has a template that if any of you would like to have a look at, it's from 2 years ago, I think, where it was updated, where we went through from a DPAC level and said, you know, what are the things we have to have as far as the School Act goes? What are the things we need to have as far as gaming kind of rules? And so that template is there. If anyone of you would like a copy, please let Sandy know. She can send you one. And that's it. Thank you.